Good morning, everyone. In this lecture, I will introduce some new concepts of the demography and or population. So this is the first lecture contents. I will try to divide it as 2 or 3 videos based on the length of the lecture, so that you can have the shorter the length of the concentration. All right. So the lecture slides will be posted on the Friday regularly on the weekly basis, so that you can prepare the weekly quiz due every Sunday. All right. So this is the lecture slides, and let me start the presentation. Okay, and let me double check it's working now. All right, so the introduction to the population studies. So how many people? So the number of the people and how many people are in some specific area. So these are very specific questions we can see in the studies of the population. We are not doing the face-to-face or the physical classes in this semester for this course, but I would say we have 8 students. So in your perspective, you have the 8 classmates. In terms of the size of the classroom, it will determine a lot about the ways of the communication. For example, if we have 10 students, for example, if we have 20 students or the 40 or the 50 students, we might need to change the lecture style, such as in this small size of the number of students, we may have more communication, such as discussion and the topics of the presentation. But if we have 50 or 60 students like this, we may need to have maybe one directional lecture, such as just the teachers or professors do their own lectures, and you might need to have the listen the lecture or the read the textbook only instead of the interactions with others. So we can see that the number of the students throughout the history, we could see many of the changes. So for example, how many students did you have in your senior classroom, or in your senior or the middle school class, or junior high school, elementary school? Based on the generation, we would have very different options. So back in South Korea, I came from South Korea about 12 years ago. So that was not that much old. I'm not that old yet, that much, but that was the very, very ordinary scene of the classroom in South Korea. And even they divided as the morning class and the afternoon class, because they had about 60 or 70 students in one classroom. So based on the number of the students, we may see very different types of the situation, determining the environment of the communication or the education. So this is the university, on the scene of the university in the Northwestern Michigan College about 30 or 40 years ago. And we can see that they don't have any of the devices, but they are just doing their architecture classes based on the hard copies of the papers. So based on the number and based on the technology, we would see very different contexts of the education in that field. So let's suppose that we have the class size reaching 125% of the maximum capacity. We can easily calculate the number of the increased class size. So let's suppose that the original class size was 25 students, and in case the class size reached 125%, we can easily calculate that. So the 100% is just itself. So the 25%, the 25 students will be the 100% of the classroom size. But in case that's 125, that is very equivalent with the 1.25. So 125% is 1.25 times than the original capacity. So we can calculate the original number of the classroom and 1.25. So after that calculation, and that's approximately 31.25 students. Then we cannot find 0.25 students in the reality. We would round off that to 0.25. So we can argue that after increasing to 125% of the original classroom, we would say that there are 31 students now compared with the 25 students in original. So in the base calculation, we can find the increase or the decrease of the population in the setting like the classroom, or in the city or the municipality, like that. So the demography, this is one of the key concepts that the demography or the studies of the population has three major topics examined in that studies of the population. The first one is the size and composition. Sorry. The size means the number of the population. For example, as we saw, the number of the students in the classroom, or the number of the people, or the number of the residents in Jonesboro. And the composition is the structure of the population. For example, age, structure, ethnicity, and how many whites, and how many African Americans or blacks, and how many Asians, and how many Hispanics. Based on the gender in the classical setting, the males or females, but in more the modernized ones, we could see the based on the gender orientations. There are many categories in the gender and the union, such as the co-residential union, such as the married or single, divorced, widowed, such as like that. Education status, such as elementary school, at the best education, middle school, high school, or the college or the postgraduate degrees. So we can see that size and the composition would be the one major factor we examine in the population studies. And the changes in the population composition, such as back in 30 years ago, the composition of the population in Jonesboro was very, very different from these days. And the composition of the union a long time ago, the marital status, such as the formal marriage, was the major type of the co-residential union. But in these days, there are many types of the different unions, such as cohabitation and just living alone, or sometimes some other different types of the co-residential unions. So the changes over time is also a very big topic of the population studies. And also the relationship among the maximum capacity of the class. Sorry about that. The relationship among those population compositions. For example, what if we have the changes in the age structure, such as there are no more